There is a photograph that tells you everything you need to know about Saudi Arabia in 2026. This is an aerial view of the Saudi desert in the Tabuk region, in the northwest part of the country. In the middle of the empty desert, two long parallel walls of mirrored glass stretch far into the distance. Around them, there is almost nothing, only sand, emptiness, a few cranes, and a remains of a huge $500 billion project that was once meant to change the world. The project was called The Line, a futuristic city planned to be 170 kilometers long. It was designed to have no roads, no cars, and no pollution. Around 1 million people were supposed to live inside this massive mirror-covered structure, which would cut across the Arabian desert like a giant blade. Mohammed bin Salman stood at a podium and told the world that this was the beginning of human civilization's next chapter. But in March 2026, NEOM cancelled its $1 billion tunneling contract, the literal foundation of the line. Construction has effectively stopped. The Korean company that held the contract, Hyundai Engineering and Construction, received a formal termination notice and filed a stock market disclosure. The line is not being built, it's being buried, and the Saudi government is hoping nobody notices. But here's the thing, the line was never actually about architecture, it was never about sustainable cities or zero carbon living. It was a distraction, the most expensive distraction in human history, designed to make the world and Saudis themselves believe that the kingdom had a future beyond oil. It does not. Now let's talk about the number that runs this entire story, $91. That is how much oil needs to cost per barrel for Saudi Arabia to simply break even on its budget. Not grow, not fund giga projects, not build cities in the desert. Just break even and cover its bills, pay its civil servants, and keep the lights on. In the mid-2025, oil was trading at $71 a barrel. But if you include the public investment fund's spending, the sovereign wealth fund that is bankrolling the Vision 2030, the real break-even number jumps to 113 per barrel. The gap between what Saudi Arabia needs and what the market delivers is not $20. It's a structural wound that is bleeding every single day. The result of it is that Saudi Arabia's budget deficit in just first quarter of 2026 hit a record $34 billion. The government projects a full-year deficit of $44 billion in 2026, and they have already told the world that they will be running deficits until at least 2028. For a country that was supposed to be transforming from oil dependency, this is not progress. This is the same trap, just more expensive. Saudi government desperately does not want you to understand that Vision 2030 has not reduced oil dependency, but instead it has increased it. When MBS launched Vision 2030 in 2016, oil accounted for about 60% of government's revenue and 65% of exports. In 2026, those numbers are roughly the same. The decade of transformation, hundreds of billions spent, and the needle has barely moved. The worst part is that the giga projects that was supposed to replace oil revenue are themselves funded by oil revenue. This is the trap. NEOM needs oil money to exist. The Red Sea tourism project needs oil money. Riyadh Air, the new national airline, needs oil money. When oil prices fall, the transformation agenda falls with it. The cure is killing the patient. Trojena, the desert ski resort where Saudi Arabia wanted to host the 2029 Asian Winter Games, has been quietly abandoned. The Winter Games has been moved elsewhere. An artificial ski resort in 50 degrees heat was always madness. What changed is that the kingdom can no longer afford the madness. The PIF, Saudi Arabia's $900 billion sovereign wealth fund, the financial engine of the entire transformation, wrote down $8 billion in giga project investments in 2024 alone. Giga project investments declined 12.4% year over year. And LIV Golf, the $2 billion attempt to buy global sports credibility, is being dropped at the end of 2026 season. Saudi Arabia bought a golf tour to launder its international reputation, but now it cannot afford the greens fees. Here is what makes this genuinely dangerous rather than just embarrassing. Saudi Arabia has almost no water. This is not policy problem, it is geology. 89% of kingdom's water demand is met by pumping from ancient underground aquifers. Fossil water that accumulated over tens of thousands of years and is being depleted in decades. Once it is gone, it is gone. No rainfall refills and no technology recreates it. It is a finite resource being burned through for agriculture, for desalination, and for a population that has tripled in 40 years. The remaining 9% comes from energy-intensive desalination, a process that burns oil to turn seawater into drinking water. So Saudi Arabia uses its oil to generate electricity to desalinate seawater to survive, and it imports 80% of its food. The country sitting on the world's second largest oil reserve, a nation so wealthy that it built a ski resort in the desert, imports 80% of what its people eat. Every war, every trade disruption, every shipping crisis is a direct threat to whether Saudis can afford to eat. The Iran war and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz in early 2026 was not just an energy crisis. For Saudi Arabia, it was a food security crisis, a supply chain crisis, and an investment confidence crisis, all at once. Now let's talk about geopolitics, because this is where the Saudi story gets truly dark. For 10 years, MBS played what analysts called a hedging strategy. He cultivated China, signing strategic partnership agreements in 2016 and 2022. He cultivated Russia with partnership agreements in 2019. He normalized with Iran in 2023, brokered by Beijing. He signed a mutual defense agreement with Pakistan in 2025. He tried to build a Saudi Arabia that did not need America, that was not dependent on any single power. Then the Iran war started. In February 2026, the United States and Israel struck Iran. Iranian missiles and drones immediately began targeting Gulf infrastructure. And Saudi Arabia, with all its Chinese partnerships, all its Russian agreements, all its strategic hedging, picked up the phone and called Washington. Because when the missiles start falling, the only country that can actually protect Saudi Arabia from Iran is the United States. China does not have the military assets in the Gulf. Russia is busy in Ukraine. Pakistan can send soldiers but not air defense systems. The entire decade of strategic autonomy collapsed into irrelevance in a matter of weeks. And now Saudi Arabia is stuck. It cannot fully align with America without enraging Iran further. It cannot align with Iran without abandoning its American security umbrella. It cannot be neutral because the war is too close and the stakes are too high. The regional competition with the UAE is shortening this further. The UAE, smaller, leaner, faster, has already become what Vision 2030 dreamed of being. Dubai attracts more foreign investments than Riyadh. Abu Dhabi has better infrastructure. The UAE pulled out of OPEC in April 2026, directly undermining Saudi Arabia's role as cartel's leader. The Arab world's two most powerful monarchies are now in quiet economic warfare with each other. Now let's go to the most revealing number of this entire story, 1%. That is the share of Saudi Arabia's electricity that comes from renewable energy in 2023. In the country that sits in the world's single greatest solar energy zone, where the sun hammers down at temperature that makes solar panel laugh, only 1% of electricity comes from renewables. Saudi Arabia has committed to 50% renewables by 2030. It has set aside $187 billion to meet its climate goals. It has made speeches, held summits, posed for photographs next to solar panels, and then gone home and burned oil for 99% of its electricity. This is because domestically subsidized oil is too cheap to replace. There is no market signal strong enough to force the transition when you can burn your own crude for almost nothing. The system rewards oil dependency. Everything, the electricity grid, the desalination plants, the petrochemical industry, the government budget, is optimized for oil. Changing it requires breaking every incentive that holds the kingdom together. This is not an engineering problem, it's a political economy problem, and Saudi Arabia has not shown any credible sign of solving it. And then there is a human cost for a dream that is collapsing. Human Rights Watch published a report on December 2024 titled "Die First and I'll Pay You Later." It documented widespread labor abuse across Saudi Arabia's giga projects. 16 hours working days, denial of leave, unpaid commutes, families of dead workers denied compensation. An investigation found that 21,000 Indian, Bangladeshi, and Nepalese workers had died in Saudi Arabia since 2017, working on Vision 2030 developments. The Howe Tut tribe, 20,000 people who had lived in the NEOM zone for centuries, were forcefully displaced to make way for the line. Saudi Arabia cleared its own people from their ancestral land to build a city that now sits abandoned. The sand has already started to reclaim it. Saudi Arabia is not a failed state. Let's be honest about that. It has $900 billion in sovereign wealth. It has the world's lowest cost oil production. It has a young population. It has real infrastructure. These are not nothing, but the math does not work. It needs $91 oil, which the world may never reliably deliver that again as energy transition accelerates. It's running $44 billion deficit in a year. Its water is running out. Its flagship transformation projects are being cancelled one by one. Its geopolitical strategy of independence collapsed the moment a real war began. Its renewable energy transition is a decade behind where it needs to be. Its relationship with the most powerful neighbor, the UAE, is fracturing. Its international reputation was built on sports washing and mega project announcements that have not been materialized. And in the desert north of Tabuk, where mirrors were supposed to rise, where 1 million people were supposed to live car-free in a sustainable utopia, there is just sand and wind. In the next 40 years, when an oil era ends, the question of what Saudi Arabia built to replace it will receive a very uncomfortable answer. The kingdom did not run out of oil, it ran out of time. If you found this analysis insightful, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.